Welcome to the Unwritten podcast, where we have real conversations about faith, life, and what it's really like to have Jesus in your story. I'm your host, Gwen, and today's guest really took the scripture literally when it says, "Go tell the world." Lenisa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm stoked about this. We're going to be talking about her student mission year, why she even chose to do that, and what does mission look like now in her life after that. So a little bit of reflection. So I want to just ask you, where are you from? Do you have siblings? Give us a little backstory on who you are.
I'm from Michigan. Well, I've lived there the last 15 years of my life. My dad's a pastor there. We live in the Traverse City area. If anyone wants to stalk who the pastor is there. I have an older brother and a younger brother. I'm in the middle. I'm the only one in college right now. So, yeah.
What are you going to school for?
I am going to school for English education, secondary ed, and I recently added a religion minor. So
Okay.
I'll be able to teach 6th to 12th grade English and religion, hopefully.
All right. And we'll get into your teaching background a little bit more in this podcast. But I'm sure everyone wants to know, what made you decide to become a student missionary, and where did you end up going?
So sometimes I think that it started in high school, but it actually started a long time before that. When I was about 11 or 12 at Michigan camp meeting, which is kind of a big thing if you're in Michigan, and some people outside of Michigan know about it. There was some initiative that I don't remember who was in charge of it, but someone would come around to all the tents, the kids' tents, and they would hand out these cards. And basically, it was an opportunity to commit 1 year of your life to God before you turn 25. So the first time I encountered one of these cards, I was probably like 11. And I filled them out almost every summer when I saw them. And I didn't put my address, but I was like, God knows.
You didn't want them to come find you,
I
but
was
you were committed.
I was committed. I was like, this is a recommitment in case I forgot, in case I was like, whatever. I didn't want to count anything that wasn't actual missions or service for God as that. So I wanted to actually do that. So that was before I went to high school. And then in high school, we had missionaries from, I think, Adventist World Radio came, gave presentations, and I was kind of reconvinced. And I filled out a commitment card. Man, those commitment cards got me 5 times.
So the Michigan Conference has tons of commitment cards.
They just know, yeah.
Yes.
So I filled out a commitment card that I dedicated short-term missions, like a mission trip, 1 year of missions, like the 1 year before 25 to God, and even long-term missions. I checked all those boxes. I was feeling the spirit, and I was like, I mean, growing up, my parents would read me missionary stories and stuff. So I'd always heard some about that, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to take this seriously. So probably my junior year of high school is really where the commitment locked in for me.
Wow. So then you come to college, and then in what year did you decide, I'm going to take a year off and do it? What made you make that decision, that timeline?
So I came to Southern, and I knew they had a student missions program. A lot of people take either the year off after their freshman year or their sophomore year. I remember my freshman year, they had student missions vespers, and I was the first one down the aisle. Didn't care if anyone was looking at me. I was like, I already made this decision, so it wasn't a in the moment deciding. It was pre-decided for me. So I walked down the aisle. I was like, I'm going. And but I knew I didn't want to do it right away. So I was kind of a little bit early making the commitment. So I talked to the people about it, and then I decided to go after my sophomore year. So I just got into the education program, and I didn't really have any specific idea of where I wanted to go, but I was like, I'm doing this. I took way too long to do the signing up process because it's a little bit complicated. But I ended up signing up to go, and then it wasn't until a couple months before before the school year ended that I actually decided where I was going to go. And that was a big answer to prayer. I remember I was cleaning at the VM, And one of my friends from high school came up to me and she was like, hey, I heard you're going on missions and I am too. And I wanted to know like if you knew where you wanted to go. And I was like, probably somewhere sunny where I can teach. You know, that was as specific as I really was getting. And then she was like, hey, I heard about this place called Palau. And I know some people who went there. What would you think about looking into that? And I was like, sure. Like, no idea what Palau was, like, no idea anything about it. And, you know, long story short, prayed about it, looked into it, made the decision with not that much information about it. And yeah, that's kind of how the whole process began.
So you decided to go to Palau. And once you got there, I mean, I think I would be a little nervous leading into it of like a whole year without seeing my family. It's me. Maybe you have a friend there, but still like that feels hefty. Like it just that 365 days. And then once you get there, like I think that you're trying to take everything in. And what was that feeling like of anticipation? And then you get there and I don't know. What was that? What was that like?
Yeah. So I honestly, nothing really settled in for me because I was so busy that summer before I went that nothing hit me until I really got there. So I ended up getting there late. And so I kind of had called on the phone my friend who was already there. And I was like, what's it like? Like, do I need to bring like a water filter? And like,
Right.
I thought it was going to be like super, super like intense.
Right.
And I knew it was teaching and I didn't really know what extent like the living conditions were like. And so I was expecting to be like incredibly culture shocked.
Right.
And obviously it's like a day ahead and it's completely across the world, like Micronesia. I have to like zoom in on a map to show people where it is. I was always like, it's above Australia, it's next to the Philippines. Like you kind of just have to like zoom in and trust that it's somewhere around there. So the flight there, I honestly was expecting to have jet lag, didn't. Get there at like 3 a.m. by the time I get to bed that first night. And by the next day, I was like up at 9, got a tour of the place. I think I acclimated a lot faster than I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting it to be so small, even though I knew it was going to be small.
Right.
But like once I had a tour and like the first week or so, once I like got driven around, I was like, oh, like I can see the ocean on that side, and then we drive a little bit, and then I can see the ocean on that side, and that's it, you know?
So it's pretty small. Mm-hmm. Was the school pretty small then? How many students total?
The school was bigger than I was expecting. So it's a full elementary school, K to 8th grade. There's 2 classes per grade. I think there's between 250 and 300 students.
Okay, that's
so,
actually...
Yeah, I think there's about 23 teachers, I would say, so.
And then how many student missionaries were with you?
That's something that I also wasn't expecting. There was about 14 student missionaries at the location. There's an academy and an elementary school. So at the elementary school, I believe there was 11 of us. Wow. So I only knew a few of them from before. I think 2 of them I knew before. The rest of them, these kids from all over the place just came, and we're all in the same boat together. So
did you find that you bonded with them and that you had time to bond, or were you was your schedule pretty busy?
Well, in the beginning, I feel like we were both, like me and my roommate, we were both so focused on like trying to adjust to everything that we didn't really go outside of our apartment. Like we went to school, we figured it out, we came home, and that's all we did. And about 3 months in, we started trying to like celebrate birthdays with the group, and we tried to like start doing some outings on Sabbaths and like, you know, and I would say probably about 3 months in, we started getting to know the group a little bit better. Since I wasn't there like before school started to get the training and everything, I didn't know people as well either. And so I was a little bit of a recluse and I stayed inside a lot. And so it took me a little bit longer to get to know people. But
it sounds like once you did, that y'all had some special
Oh yeah, it was an amazing group. We really were like family by the time we left. And so especially second semester, we took advantage of any time that we weren't teaching to do things together, explore Bible studies, dinners together, any birthday we could celebrate. We were celebrating in the most dramatic way. It was really special.
That's awesome. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but before you went on your mission, leading into it, and then on your mission, you were in a relationship. How does that tie in? So if someone is in a relationship with someone going into a student missionary year, how do you like compartmentalize the two? Because you're living two very different lives. How do you keep them in the loop with that? Is it smart? I mean, I don't know. It's just a question I've been thinking.
That's a good question. Yeah. So it's kind of taboo to be in a relationship either while you're there or before you go. You have to sign something that's obviously like a logical thing. You're not going to get in a relationship with like locals or other student missionaries while you're there. And that's just to help you remember like what your focus is. You're there to protect you. To protect you as well, obviously. Yeah. For me, I didn't anticipate being in a relationship before I went. And I think in general, all relationships with family, with friends in general, that was like a shock for me in communicating with a 14-hour time difference.
Yeah, that's hard.
And obviously like a completely like booked schedule as a teacher, after school activities, things like that. I think that like going into it, it was something that I kind of just had to surrender to God.
Yeah.
Because I mean, originally I told people I wanted to be in a long distance relationship because I was like, I think that would be something that would be good for me to practice being intentional in my communication with people. And God took that seriously. So yeah, I think that was something that also it grounded me as well. So I had to schedule time to call him every day if I could, and same with my long distance best friend. We would call once a week, and having those moments like carved out of my busy schedule really was something that brought me a lot of peace and comfort. And someone who was living a completely different life than me, but who knew what was going on in my life, who was not like an unbiased opinion kind of to hear like, oh, I'm like so sorry about what you had to deal with your students. I think a blessing in disguise, not disguise, but a blessing that I didn't anticipate as well was that my boyfriend had also been on a mission year. And so he was a teacher, and he had previously experienced a lot of things that I went through. And so he kind of was a source of comfort and wisdom in some things, when I kind of would have been like, well, I can't tell my parents about this because they're just going to be like, well, we're going to pray for you, but like they don't understand, you know? And so I think that was something that, while a lot of people, it was more difficult to be in relationship or to try and maintain those connections with people back home, for me, it was exactly what I needed. And God knew that, obviously, because I didn't anticipate any of this happening, really. So
So you would say that, I mean, obviously no one is saying get in a relationship then go on a student mission year.
No.
But if, I mean, I think that we could get into all the technicals of, okay, well, you know, if your relationship is holding you back from doing that, we could get into all the technicals. But if there is someone like, okay, you know, my relationship is very important, how do I go about having a conversation and saying, hey, I want to take a student? Is it worth it? Like, would you say like you can make it as a couple to be a student missionary and you should prioritize that if you're feeling called? Or should you say, I'll put your relationship on hold and solely focus on your mission year?
That's a really good question. It's also tricky. And
it is.
My opinion or thoughts on this is not like
universal.
It's not universal, and don't just take it, you know, and but I do think that it's really important to think about your goals for your relationship. If you are both like-minded, I think something that really helped me be more confirmed in knowing that I could try this was that my boyfriend was also mission-minded. We had the same goals. We both separately wanted to serve God, and that was priority in our lives. And because of that, it was easy to say, hey, I think that putting this first in my life is worth it, and we'll let God figure out the rest in our relationship. And because we both had that as our priority, it wasn't like one of us was like had a grudge against the other for keeping us separated or for choosing something before that, because before we even got in a relationship, I had made this commitment long before. And so this was not something that either of us were getting in the way of each other. And so I think that making sure that, obviously, there's a verse in, I think, Amos where it says, can two people walk together unless they're going the same direction? And so like thinking about that and like, are you both surrendered to God in your plans for what you want to do if you both want to serve him? And it doesn't have to look the same. Like you don't both have to be doing missions, but I think that sometimes our ideas of what we should be doing, you know, we might selfishly want to be with somebody like in person or closer, or not have to have a 14-hour time difference, or, you know, even my parents, like they love me and they're so happy that I'm serving across the world, but it's hard for them because they won't see me for a year. You know, you have to understand like what sacrifices are worth it and what the outcome will be, what the
and I think that you have to, the earlier you find that out in your life, the better, of detaching yourself from things, not in an unhealthy way, not that, but I think in a way of that no matter what in your life feels most important, God's is always more important. And realizing that, you know, the more and more we get closer to his return, the more and more we're going to have to stand up for truth and make decisions that are going to detach us from things that we really love. And hopefully not family, but if it's family or if it's these things, you're having to make a stand like, no, for a year I'm being a missionary. That could be part of a growth story that, you know, a few years from now you have to make another stand. And so I think it's a full thing. And you're so lucky to have a boyfriend that's so supportive and helped you. But I would just say to the viewer, don't not be a missionary because of your significant other. You got to figure it out. And if they're not supportive, obviously that's a whole nother conversation. But I want to tap into your personal growth. Just a little bit. What surprised you about yourself? Like looking back, I think I would be like, oh man, I have a lot of growth, you know, when moments happen in my life or new experiences, I'm always like, oh, this is so humbling. What was something that was like, wow, I did not know this about myself or this strongly about myself?
I feel like there's a couple different answers I could give for this, but one that just came to mind that is humbling, like you said. I've always in my brain, I've been like, oh yeah, I'm a type A person. I'm like very like with it, put together, all these things. What I learned when I was there is I am unfortunately I'm very content with like mediocrity. And as much as I would have been like so happy to be like the on top of it, way outperforming, way overachieving teacher, I was like very content at times to be like scraping by. And that's not to say that I wasn't like giving my all and surrendering to God, but I think that I had this ideal before I went, like I'm going to change these kids' lives and I'm going to just be the perfect teacher ever. And of course that's very naive because I hadn't even practiced teaching yet before, besides like my stuffed animals when I was 6. But yeah, it was humbling to see that there was a lot of ways that I could improve, and I had fallen short of the vision that I had set for myself. And that wasn't to say that I failed my students, but there was a lot of things that I think I realized were not the way that I expected, and that I had to accept that. And so
I think when God takes us through like growth experiences, in a way, he throws us in the water and he's like, I'm going to tell you how to swim, but you got to figure it out. You got to listen to me and figure it out, you know? And in those moments are where we're like, yeah, I'm not all this in a bag of chips. Like I'm not the best teacher out here, but you know what? I'm going to trust that God brought me here because he has something he wants to teach me or one of the students. And so like there's a humbling process of, you know, you read those mission books and you like see the crazy impact they make. And you're like, I'm going to be another one of those. And do I believe you made a wonderful impact? 100%. But I think when you get humbled in your mission, you're like, maybe I'm not like the person I read in the book. It's like, wait, but the person in the book wasn't thinking about how they could be the best. They were thinking about how God could use them. And I think that's like a whole shift that happens. And that takes us into our next thing of like, how did this mission time change your relationship with God?
So, I mean, obviously I had to be way more dependent on him. Part of it was that I genuinely, physically could not make it through a day without him. Every day at like 2:00 when my kids were like
peak crazy.
Peak crazy.
Yeah.
Like cranked out. Like I was on the verge of tears.
Everyone's
And
ready to go home.
every single thing I said out loud was like being matched with like 20,000 words to God in my head. Like I had to be talking to him the whole time in order to be like Jesus for the end of my day every day.
Yeah.
What was the question?
Yeah, how did it change your relationship with God?
Okay, so number one, I would say in the example I just shared, I had to be talking to him, communicating with him all the time.
Yeah.
Some instances in the beginning of the school year where I felt so helpless and unprepared. I was just like, wow, God, I'm like actively sitting in silence, standing in front of my kids, listening, waiting to hear what to do. Like I just asked for help and I was like living in the like faith part of prayer. And that's something I hadn't really experienced before. And then another thing was that was really a blessing to me, especially as I was leaving, that I got to see the fruit of that at the very end, like you were saying, was I got to actually like practically share my faith. And well, it's like, oh, you've never shared your faith before, but like in the way that I did with my students, I got to like make Bible stories come alive for them during worships. And I got to explain things to kids who weren't Adventist, who weren't Christian, who had been in this Adventist school their whole lives and hadn't had a Bible story explained to them in this way before. And I got to hear their perspectives on things from a never heard it before standpoint. And I think that was really beautiful for me because I got to re-experience the wonder of knowing Jesus, of reading the Bible, of finding things out. And I got to kind of get a viewpoint of what it's like for people who like first come to Jesus. I remember like as a kid, I used to be like so sad that I didn't have a testimony of like, I didn't know Jesus before and now I got to see how cool he was. And I think this was a really beautiful opportunity for me to like serve him by living out my faith for the first time and like sharing Jesus, talking about him, and like all the aspects of what that looked like. So
I liked what you said about like continually having to communicate with God throughout your day, because I feel that sometimes when you're not put in when you're not put in a space where you're always thinking about being a missionary in the sense of like service.
Yeah.
When you're focused on yourself or what you have to do, you tend to forget to communicate with God. But when you're focusing on, oh my word, I have a bazillion kids in front of me and none of them are listening and I have zero control.
Yeah.
Like that is such an interesting thought, that when we are focused on ourselves, it's I don't need to really communicate with God. But when there's something that is we're trying to put service in and God is growing us, we're like, no, actually I should have been communicating with God all along.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated that. Was there a specific time that you felt like the presence of God, or maybe you got an answer and you were just like, oh, wow, I know God is real?
Yeah, there's a story that I come back to every time. I think probably like 2 or 3 months into being in Palau, one of the things I faced in my classroom that I had to deal with that I wasn't expecting to deal with was bullying, and bullying that had started long before I arrived there.
Right.
That I was like slowly seeing layers uncovered about the extent of the situation.
Right.
And that was really hard for me because obviously there's a no bullying policy at this school. And my attitude towards bullying is like anger.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
like fury.
Absolutely not.
And I remember a specific situation. Something happened at recess, not going into the details, but I missed part of it. And I had to hear one side and then the other side. And one person was crying and distraught, and the other person was claiming innocence. And
right,
I was like,
of course.
that is not what's going to be happening right now.
Right.
And I remember sending all my kids to the classroom and following them a couple minutes later after hearing the sides. One of my students had to go to the bathroom and like compose herself. I was giving her time. And as I was walking to the classroom, I like felt my fury rising. I was getting more and more upset at just the situation, at the hurt that my student was feeling based on the situation. And I remember talking to God. I was like, God, if I act on anything that I'm thinking right now, I'm not going to be showing you even in the slightest.
Yeah.
I was like, God, give me the words to say, give me what to do, because I was very, very emotional. And I walked into my classroom, and I'm sure my students felt it oozing out of me. It was dead silent. Like, they were glued to their desks.
They probably were like panicking.
Oh, I'm sure they were terrified because they'd only seen me like a little bit upset when they were loud at the end of the day, and I was trying to quiet them. So this was like full fury and silence fury, which is more like it's more nerve-wracking. So I walked to the front of my classroom, and I didn't have anything to say. I was like, I can't speak to them because I'm not going to be like Jesus if I open my mouth.
Yeah.
And so I looked at them and I saw them, and I was like, God, what do I do in my head? Like I was saying, like complete, like surrender. There's no room for you to get in the way, because all you can think about is like, how can I teach these kids the severity of what is happening, of what it means to God that one of his children is being hurt. And so I remember I walked to my desk and I opened my Bible and I took it over to the other side of the board. And on the side of my board, I have listed like all my schedule. And so I had like it written out that day, like we're doing this and then we're doing this. We had 3 more subjects left that day. And this was the afternoon recess. And I remember I looked at my kids. We had writing and grammar, word study, and then reading. And I crossed off reading and word study, and it was just writing and grammar. Crossed off grammar, wrote writing at the top of the board. And I wasn't speaking to my students at all during this time. I opened my Bible, and I just started looking for passages about God's love and about his character and about how we're supposed to be treating other people. And I just started writing like passage after passage after passage on the board. And then I wrote underneath that, copy these all down in your writing journals. And so my kids, still in fear, were just like furiously writing. And every once in a while you'd hear one kid like mutter like, why do we have to write so much? Because these kids hate writing. And the other one would be like, don't you see what we're writing? This is talking about love. Da, da, da. And they'd be like going at it. And I didn't say anything, I think, for probably like 20 minutes. And I just, poor kids, I probably wrote down like 15 passages of like 7 to 10 verses. Like they had pages to write out. And I was like, I don't have any words to say. And so I'm going to let God's word say the words for me. And I just remember like, as I was writing these verses, as I was opening my Bible, flipping through, I didn't have any of them in my mind before, but I just felt God was like,
helping you.
Remember this. And so I was flipping through, and as I would write them down after I would look at them in my Bible, I just felt like peace to start coming over me. And I remember instead of like fury, I just felt like urgency and like in hope that I could somehow, not in my own words, but in God's words, portray to these kids like how important it was that they treat each other with love. And that bullying is like the top, the number one hated thing in God's eyes towards his children. And like, that was just something that like a moment that I will always remember, because I was completely out of control. I had to completely surrender to God. And like, I had no words. No words could I give them to like remedy the situation. And I just remember like being so humbled when I heard my kids talking about how they understood the situation before I'd said anything, just by looking at the verses that they were writing down. And that was a really heavy emotional moment for me. And it was hard, but I think the beauty of it was that God showed up for me in that moment when I was literally talking to him, and I didn't have any plan before going in there. And so they spent the last 45 minutes of their school day writing Bible verses. But yeah,
I think that's, I'm a very extroverted person. So when I also am, when I'm processing, eventually at some point I need to like vomit. And I tend to word vomit when I get frustrated. Like everything that the kids had done to me, if I was in your shoes, like days before, or that I had seen in the classroom like weeks before, would have all peaked at that moment. I feel like I would have walked in the classroom and like, let me write and explain, and we're going to put names of students that have done this, and I'm going to show you where how each one of you are playing a role in this toxic environment, and it's not no one is better than y'all are all, and like, I feel like it would have been very hard for me to sit back and be like, I want to be peaceful about this, because bullying isn't a peaceful thing. And so when you see someone else hurting and maybe you've been bullied, and then you're like, no, I really want to advocate for this person.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember that first God.
The human reaction is to...
Yeah.
I couldn't even look those kids in the eyes. I had to look at my Bible at the board. I heard them talking. I couldn't look at them.
Yeah.
They would have seen the human emotion in my eyes.
They'd have been like, uh-oh. Yeah.
They would have been terrified. Yeah.
No. Okay. So with your students, do you still have a relationship with them? It would be very hard to leave them. For me, I would probably just like the last day have cried the whole time. So, what was it like? You put all this work into these kids. Yeah, you had some frustrating times, but you put all this work into it, and then you have to tap out and say, hey, what is that like?
Horrible. No. Yeah, so I ended up having to leave 2 years before. 2 weeks. Yes. 2 weeks before the end of the school year for a friend's wedding and to prepare for camp. I obviously just like absolutely booked out my year, like many obligations. And so I had to prepare for a sub to come in, and I wasn't allowed to tell my kids that I was leaving 2 weeks early until like a week and a half before I was leaving. And that was something I didn't understand either.
Yeah.
A decision that was, made by administration. I didn't have a choice. And that was really hard for me because I felt like I was lying to them or hiding something from them. And, I felt like time was slipping away. Like, the last few weeks that I was there in May, I remember trying to fit like everything into every single day. That was also really, really hard for me because I felt like a lot of my kids were showing the most spiritual interest in the last unit of my Bible. And I was like, of our Bible like subject, and I was like, how am I going to leave them when I have like 4 kids who want to take Bible studies? I have 2 kids that are coming to church with me right now. I have kids who are asking how to like highlight and annotate in their Bible, and like all these kids asking these questions for me, and we're talking about like some of the most beautiful like topics in the Bible, and how am I like leaving them right now in the middle of this? I felt like, number one, that I was like just leaving them hanging, like just a drop off spiritually. And then also I felt like I had finally like really deeply made connection with all of them. We had a field trip towards the end of the year, and that was like a time, I think they were really eager to get to know me outside of the classroom, because I'm a 21-year-old and I'm like, I pretend I don't know some of the things that they're saying, but I know what's going on, and I have 100%. To like pretend not to laugh because they're all chronically online, and I'm like, that wasn't funny. So there's a lot of things where I was like, oh, I really love these kids so much. And right when I feel like I'm like in a groove with them and things like they know what's going on, whatever, they're obviously excited for summer, and I like have to then just leave them. And I think it was also a lot more dramatic because I left before all the other SMs did. And so that was like heightened emotion for everyone. Yeah. But yeah, the last few weeks I would be like grading papers and just like sobbing and like, God, how am I going to leave them?
Yes.
And, even though they would like absolutely tire me out by the end of every single day, I never had a morning where I was like, I don't want to see those kids today. And that's crazy for me because I think that the responsibility of teaching really was more than I was expecting, especially in that environment. And yet there was not a day where I was like, I really don't want to go into work. It was for the kids and our relationships that really made it such a blessing. And so it was really hard. It was really difficult. And now I think something that's really special is a few of them have me on Messenger. And while I do still want to like maintain a professional, teacher-student relationship, I've had some of them reach out to me. I've had a couple of them call me this school year. I've reached out to them, checked in on them. one of my students one of the ones who came with me to church a lot, she gave me a little life update a few months ago. She was like, hey, I'm getting good grades, and I took your advice about like this relationship thing, and I'm going to focus on school for now because I'm young. And I was like, yes. And then, and she was like, and I've been going to church and all these things. And that was just like the most exciting thing for me ever. And then one of my students sang me a little Christmas carol on her ukulele over Christmas break, and that was the highlight probably of my Christmas season. Like, just getting to hear that, I like listen to it over and over all the time. But yeah, my students really, they took up a lot of room in my heart, way more than I realized. And so leaving them, they all wrote me letters when I was leaving. Even some of my boys who were like whatever, they were crying on the day I was leaving. And then I remember some of the moms coming and they're like, I've never seen him cry about a teacher before. They're usually like so thrilled when they get to be done for the summer, but they're like talking about how they miss you. And I was like, wow, like obviously I wasn't a perfect teacher for them, but you know, it's hard to not grow attached to kids that you get to see every day. You get to see them grow, highs and lows with them. But
yeah, when you work so hard at something, and it's a part of your everyday, and it makes you cry, and it God uses it to grow you in ways that you never would have been able to grow without it, and then that comes to an end.
Yeah,
it's a part of a control thing of letting it go and trusting that someone else can come in and take over your job, and they will still be blessed. But then it's also like so cool to see how God sends little blessings of like, you did do a good job. You were there at a time that I needed you. Moving forward into what it looks like to be a missionary now for you. Because, yeah, going to college isn't, you're being taught now, you're not teaching. And it's very different than what you did every day there. So how do you keep that mission mindset in what you do as a college student and then going forward for the rest of your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I've probably heard the how are you adjusting back after your mission year question so many times this semester. And I'm really blessed that I think I've heard somewhere that like going into another structured environment where you're serving God right after mission year is the best thing you can do. Yeah. And so I had the blessing of working at summer camp again, and going right back into serving kids for Jesus, and like into an environment that was obviously different. I'm not teaching, but you know, another time where you have to be dependent on God, and you have to trust Him, and there's so many situations you don't anticipate that you're going to run into, and so that really helped. And then coming back to school, I knew that I wanted to be serving God in some way. I was like, whatever my job is, if I can't serve Him in my job, which obviously you serve God in whatever capacity you have with the talents He's given you, but if I can't do specific ministry things, then I want to find another way to do that. But I've been blessed to be a part of the missions and ministry team on campus, and I get to be part of a like mentoring process with small group leaders. I'm a life group coach, and so I get to meet with 4 wonderful ladies each week and just kind of talk through their leadership and their ministry, little groups on campus, and see how God is using them and how I can support them. And it challenges me as well to practically live out my faith again, and to be a living example and not just a sayer but a doer of the word. And so that's been a huge blessing, is not only being poured into through this ministry team, but getting to pour into others. And I think that's something that I didn't realize as well that was such a huge blessing in Palau. We had such a strong community of teachers where we met every morning for a beautiful staff worship. And we had our prayer request and praise time, and we were all so supportive of each other. I think most schools, you don't have that type of a community that is so God-centered and God-dependent, and I think that set me up so well I probably have high expectations now going into wherever I'll teach in the future, but then having camp where there's a similar environment of being poured into and also, you know, receiving from God to pour into others. And, you know, it's the same idea here in the Office of Ministry and Missions. We have a little analogy that they like to use, or example, where it's they call it pitcher, cup, saucer, plate. So basically, God pours into you, you're the cup, and then from his pouring into you, you overflow into the leaders that you mentor, which then overflows into the greater group of people on campus. And basically, you just get to be a witness of all the ways God is working, so far extended from you, but that's starting from, receiving from him. And that same idea kind of just, to me, is something that doesn't need to be in a workplace or a certain school environment or whatever. It can be in all parts of life.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how you go through something like, student missions and working at camp and leadership roles. I feel like that sets you up for each stage of life. Like the growth that you got from being a student missionary to now leading here and mentoring girls on how to be good leaders. Like you have insight and you have patience learned and you have all these things. And then, but more importantly than that, you have such beautiful testimonies of what Jesus has done through you to encourage, to say, no, like Jesus is real.
Yeah.
He's not just out there and doesn't care about you. No, he's so real. And this is how he's been real in my life. And I think that's the most exciting part of growth, is learning that growth came from Jesus and being grateful for that. And so in each stage of your life, I mean, I can see that God is going to keep growing you and taking you into these leadership roles. And even when you go into these schools, you can be that source of glue that pulls people together to pray when you're a teacher and leads out in that way. But no, in all seriousness, God will continue to grow you. My last question is, what would you tell someone if they were, maybe we'll make this a little difficult for you. What would you tell someone if they were absolutely against missions?
Well, I think a lot of people view missions as going to a third world country, which that term is also kind of taboo now, I feel like, but going to a third world country, getting rid of everything that is comfortable, that you hold dear, leaving family and loved ones, sacrificing all, and being uncomfortable and miserable so that one person might know about Jesus. And I think that a lot of times people view it in the most extreme way, and some people do that, and they take that literally, and they go they're full sending it for Jesus. And not that mission should be a partway commitment, but I think that a life fully surrendered to God truly is going to have some mission aspect to it. Whether that's in your community, in your church, service in general is part of what Jesus did. And I think that if you're fully committed to serving him and living for him, that part of your life will show as well. And if there is something that you're holding on to, I think sometimes the most uncomfortable situation is us being against something and then God using that to reveal something in our lives that maybe we need to get rid of, or we need to let go of, or we need to surrender to him. Before I did missions, I was nervous about, not being around family, not being across the world, being so disconnected from the support and the community and the comfort. And, that also was humbling, because that showed me that maybe I'm a little bit too tied down to my monetary possessions or my security in my family or things like this that are not promised forever. And, I think of also the line that I've heard before is like, the only thing you can take to heaven is other people. And so if you are tied down to things that are not that and bringing other people with you to heaven, then maybe you need to do some introspection.
Yeah, some heart reflection.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I was like fully, in it too. No. I had to learn. I had to be humbled, and I think missions can be part of everyone's life in some capacity. If you are not ready to go across the world, that's okay. Jesus has somewhere where we can all be working for him. But sometimes it does take that drastic, shock factor for us to kind of realize what Jesus was all about and what we've been missing out on all along. And That doesn't necessarily mean you need to go forever.
Yeah.
But having that, mission trip experience, 1 year experience, a couple years dedication really can change your perspective on what truly matters in life.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that you can also just be a missionary in your home and in your local church.
Mm-hmm.
More than
Absolutely.
ever, we see more and more small churches needing someone to play the piano, needing someone to needing young people to just come into this tiny little church.
Teach Sabbath school, help with the offering, anything.
Yeah, be a part of it. Bring your friends. Go to the neighborhood. Invite people to come to church. And so I do feel like there is a need here, but also there's such a need outside of here too.
Yeah.
And sometimes the need isn't so that you can show someone else Jesus. It's that so that Jesus can show himself to you.
Mercy, yeah.
Because I feel that a lot of times we're like, I am going because they need Jesus and I'm the savior that's bringing them Jesus.
Right.
And unfortunately, not even unfortunately, that's just not it.
Not quite, no.
Yeah. And a lot of times they're content. They're happier than we even are.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so we're going there saying, oh, I'm better and you need Jesus. No. We're going there because Jesus needs to work on us.
Yeah.
And because, yes, we do have a gospel that we want to share. And there is a need for people in the field of mission work. So at your home, in a third world country, wherever you go, you can be a missionary.
Absolutely.
Last thing, 3 essentials for any missionary. If you're going on a mission year, 3 things you have to take. You only get these 3 things.
That's really hard because every location is so different.
Okay, pull out. 3 things. And you get one. Okay, we're going to give you one outfit. The outfit you're wearing is given. But everything else you're going to have to buy there. So 3 things, period.
Besides, obviously, your Bible and, other things.
You only get 3 things.
Your Bible.
Okay, your Bible.
A translation that you love.
Okay.
That you can physically take. If you have a small, compact one, maybe that, you can't fit much in your suitcases. That you can just open with you anywhere you go. A really good reusable water bottle. One that can stand the test of airplanes and boats.
Test of time.
Kids knocking it off your desk and, everything. You're going to want a good water bottle that also you don't lose. And honestly, I would say if you have some particular seasoning in your cupboard that you are very fond of, maybe take that. Because depending on your location, there's, there's interesting food choices. So if you have if you have that little flavor of home, you might be able to stomach whatever you're putting in, For me, that was a songoya, so I could make my yellow rice.
There you go.
But I was really blessed at my location to have so many things. But yeah, I would say a little flavor of home. If that means also something from home that reminds you of home, that's comforting. Yeah, but sometimes it's good to just embrace the place where you are.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't quite get there because I still don't eat fish. But
well, you can go on another one.
Yeah.
Long term. You still have a long-term commitment.
That was another check mark on my
so
card.
We'll see. Maybe the next podcast you'll have come back from a 3-year mission to somewhere and it'll be awesome. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us on the Unwritten podcast. And always remember, you do have a testimony of how Jesus has worked with you. And don't be scared to share it. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. And we'll see you next time.